Yo, what's up, dudes? This is a video idea I've had in my mind for a couple weeks now, and after some brainstorming, I think I've actually managed to somewhat compile it into a series of cohesive thoughts that I can condense into a nice little video. So, as usual, remember this is subjective, and it's something that should be taken with, at most, a grain of salt. But if you really want to use this as a sort of reference or something, feel free to, and I hope you dudes enjoy. I'm going to start this off by kind of diving into what makes just a standard player, like a normal average player. First off, I would say that they're capable of getting kills, and this is a trivial point since I feel like most people are capable of getting kills, but I'm referring to if you hand them like a gnawing hunger and a mountaintop, like they're going to get kills. Typically, you find them to be incredibly inconsistent with maybe some slight consistency at best, and what I mean by this is their playstyle is seemingly random. They kind of just wander around the map looking for something on the radar. If they see a player, they're going to pull out the shotgun and W key them. If it's not close enough on the radar, they're just going to, hold ADS and bot walk around the corner. That type of deal. That might be the levels of consistency you see. And using that, we can segue to the next point, is that they're usually incredibly predictable. You can hear their footsteps. They don't do much masking. They don't slide around. They don't helicopter. They don't do anything besides run and shoot. And this leads to the next point, which is they're typically pretty hesitant in that regards. If you provide them with a direct challenge where they're not real sure what to do, it's either they just hold down the trigger and hope for the best, or they kind of they struggle. They don't really know what to do. For example, if I'm a Titan, I put down a barricade after putting 2 headshots into them, they're either going to run forward or just keep holding down the trigger, and this is a form of hesitation out of panic. They don't really know what to do. Another case of this is, let's say I'm putting a lot of pressure on their spawn in a 6v6 game mode. These are the players who are typically going to sit in the spawn and pull out like a blast furnace and just start spamming shots because they don't know what else to do. I feel like what I just said covers the next 2 points that I have, which is that they're uncertain as to what play to make at times and that they struggle under pressure. The next point is that these are the type of people who benefit the most from the quote cheesy playstyle, which like right now I would argue is like Revoker and a Summoner, Gnawing Hunger, Mountaintop, that type of deal, shoulder charge builds, that type of deal where it's very cheesy, it's very Destiny-like, and I feel like better players would make much better use out of something that's not that, high skill floor, low skill ceiling type builds. I argue that you typically are going to find these guys around the 0.7 to the 1.3 KDR range, like kill-death ratio. And they're usually casual PvP players, so this is understandable where they like main PvE. And a final note of playstyle that I notice a lot of is that they're usually camping a weapon, and they don't understand how to abuse things like quick draw or snapshot, perks like that. So at the end of each of these little checklist sections, I'm going to just kind of go through this whole rambling phase, and I'm just going to start that now. These casual players, they kind of look clueless or lost a lot of the times where they're not sure what they want to do. They just know that something is going to shoot them and they want to shoot it better. And this tends to lead to a problem for people who like pushing spawns and stuff like that because, if you sit in the spawn and you see the rest of your team in the spawn, like a casual player might find when a good player spawns sniping or spawn trapping them, they're just going to sit in a lane with while ADS, and they're just going to shoot whatever they see that's red. And so these people really, again, they're casual players, so you can't fault them, but they're just playing the game the way they want to play, and they are seemingly very lost with very poor game sense, very poor just everything in general regarding PvP. Could fool me.
What the fuck did I just witness? What the fuck was that?
So yeah, pretty much that. Moving on from that, I'm going to talk about what makes a quote good player. And to start this off, I'm going to bring it up just right out of the gate. These are the people where you're starting to run into more meta play styles, where these are the guys who can pick up a meta hand cannon, put some shots in, and average, like a 4-shot to kill across a whole match. You can also find that these players are going to be somewhat or relatively consistent up to a degree. And what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is in the context of something like quick play, They have the time to kill, they have the gunfire, the accuracy, all that type of stuff in order to just absolutely dunk on like just your average PvE, casual PvP player without much hesitation, without much stress. But when you place them against other good players or, you know, great players or whatever you want to call them all, they're gonna struggle and they may not shine too well without kind of crutching or running around with the top meta. The caveat of this is that they are typically pretty damn predictable to a degree. And it's usually because their play is based around something, which is like a streamer that they watch, their subclass or their loadout. And a subnote that they have on this is that gimmicky playstyles are almost always in effect at this level, and that means like, you know, people going for the two-hand cannon celestial fire spam, or like wombo combo launching and stuff like that with spectral blades. I wanted to kind of avoid saying this type of thing in this video, but just to say it and get it over with, these are the people who typically know how to abuse a subclass or a class entirely, but they're not very good at playing it. They're also often lacking intuitive thought in regards to upper level play, and their gameplay is very execution heavy. For example, let's say that we're in a 3v3 situation, and in their head, one teammate's going to split off, they're going to push with their other teammate, get a kill in a nice 2v2 or 2v1 fight, but in the real situation, their teammate misses shots and goes down immediately to a shotgun shot, and now they're left in a 1v2, 1v3 situation that they don't really know how to improv their way out of, besides like spamming abilities and running away. Moving back to the quick play environment, they might struggle under pressure or with anything that's not like a straight up one-on-one fight. For example, they get pushed by two other people and they're in cover, they're in a good spot. They may not have the time to kill or just general intuition to spread the damage evenly so that they can cleanly get both of these kills and escape with their life. These are also often the people where they're a little bit more invested in PvP and they want to have a nice mental space where they feel like their work and effort has been invested properly. So you can find them with a little bit of an ego or a lot of bit of an ego depending on who you run into. Unfortunately, but that's just the Destiny community and that could be said for any facet of the game, am I right? You can typically find these guys with like a 1.5 or a 2.0 KDR, and as I said before, they're definitely a little more invested in PvP. They'll watch streams, you know, they'll play comp, they'll play trials, they'll really invest themselves in it because they enjoy the PvP or maybe it makes them feel good. Well, you can find these people making well thought out plays and executing them quite well. They're very likely to telegraph it, just based on how long it takes them to execute it or set up for it. This tends to go hand in hand with they have a sense of relentlessness often, but you can see this often troped by like overzealousness, where maybe they bit off a little more than they could chew, where a better player may have calculated that just better in general and they would have been able to account for that. And this goes into my final point where you'll see that they capitalize on an opening if provided one, but sometimes it's not optimally. What I mean by this is like, you're behind the box, they have a shotgun, you have a snipe, they're on top down, and you're a Titan or something. They might try to Icarus dash, but not really account for maybe a player spawning behind you or something like that. To jump into my rambling part here, these players are at the cusp of being like really good at the game or really bad at the game. And this is a really broad spectrum because there can be really, really good players, but really, really bad good players as well. Take an example, the average flawless player versus the average unbroken player. That's probably a really good metric to base off of. In any case, moving on, these guys have good game sense, you know, they know how to flow a map, they know power positions, they understand where to be, instead of just kind of like aimlessly looking around and stuff like that. They should have like a very nice rudimentary understanding of the spawn system and how to manipulate, how to exploit it for their benefit. And in general, they're just very well-rounded players that just, they lack a lot of the experience or critical development that like a quote great player might have in regards to being able to flow and understanding what to expect arbitrarily around the corner and things like that. They're definitely very blurred lines, that's for sure. To mark the beginning of the end of this cute little checklist, I'm going to start talking about attributes of great players. For a great player, gunfighting is typically not an issue. They can usually pull off a TTK with single fire weapons every single time, like hand cannon, scout rifles, sniper rifles. I find them to be incredibly consistent in most scenarios, although randomness tends to affect things a lot here. They're not necessarily per se unpredictable, but they do have a very high degree of calculation and execution, which means that you could possibly expect anything at any time when it makes sense, thus giving them an inherently unpredictable nature. And you can usually see them able to pull off a lot of spicy combat maneuvers, and regardless of their subclass or exotic gimmick. These players can also work incredibly well under pressure and are typically capable of taking on several opponents at once, given the correct circumstances. And I just wanted to take this second to point out that we do all have the same health points, or at least the same range of health points, so you can keep that in mind if you face someone who's just so much better than you. If you want, like, you and your teammate push with a shotgun, you're more than likely going to get that kill. You also find that these players can improvise and execute plays nearly perfectly when the need arises, and it's almost more like a constant flow of combat instead of having this various blocks of gameplay of like burst plays. For example, like I die, I make a play, I die, I make a play. But with these people, it's like the play never stops. They're just simply adding on to their playbook as the game goes on. It's hard to explain, but when you watch it, you'll notice. Usually, you'll find that their subclass is centered around how they want to play or how they can benefit a team. This is a very subjective point, and it's how I approach things. I also just like to play Stormcaller, so yeah. These guys probably have an ego, but it's the Destiny community again, and people who are playing like this probably deserve a little bit of one, but it's always good to be humble, and it's always respectable. They understand how to very effectively weave between their weapons, like their primary and their special, and this is something that I feel like is criminally underrated, and I'll probably have a video on the topic itself, but for the point now, just understand that this is something that, if you pay attention, like lesser skilled players aren't very good at this. These people are also incredibly good at utilizing map space and exploiting the hell out of it. And they tend to be very ruthless and relentless in nature. Typically, you're not going to survive if you give them any opening whatsoever, and this is just due to special weapons ZTK being very quick these days. And when I bring up the topic of being ruthless and relentless, I'm mainly referring to just how they execute their play. Like, if you give them an opening, or if you make a mistake, anything, like a slight movement mistake, they're going to capitalize on that, and they're going to push with nothing held back because they want that kill. In their head, you have given them the perfect kill, and the perfect opportunity for a free kill. And to end it off, if a play that they make is telegraphed, it's more than likely a bait, and you're probably about to get dunked on. These quote-unquote great players are generally the ones that you kind of view them as a juggernaut. They go into quick play. If you hand them two weapons that fire, they typically drop 40 or 50 kills every match. They can carry teams easily in comp and in trials, and they're just all-around great players, smart players, effective players. And for the final rambling part of this video, the quote great players, they just have it down pat. Like, they know how to flow around the map, they know how to abuse the power positions, they know how to manipulate the spawn system. They can typically take on multiple targets based on game sense and understanding what they need to use at what time. And I feel like the gameplay that I believe that I'm gonna post in here as an example, I do a lot of this stuff that I'm saying right now. And not that I particularly think I'm the best player in the world or anything, but I feel like a lot of my gameplay does demonstrate what it takes or what I'm fulfilling as quote-unquote the great player. And I'm not saying I'm the model great player or anything like that. I really want to point that out. But even if I did, I would still use my own gameplay because, I don't know, I'm attractive or something. In any case, these people just have such a good flow state. They usually just know the right move at the right time in the context of quick play. In terms of 3v3 or survival, it gets a little different because, you know, you're relying on teammates at that point because you actually care about the outcome in trials and survival. But in general, these people they understand the power positions, they have the game sense, they know how to predict, they know how to read plays, they know how to bait plays. Everything it comes together. It's like the culmination of the pinnacle of experience, and the only way that you get better is you just improve upon something that is seemingly unimprovable. You know what I mean? Jelly bean. In order to wrap this video up, I want to just make a point and say that this isn't necessarily meant to be a guide on how to become a great player or a good player or a better player or anything like that. It's more a subjective video that objectively has no fucking point whatsoever, to be honest with you. But in any case, I wanted to make it just to kind of lay out my opinion on like what makes a great player, what makes a good player, what makes a average player, or maybe a bad player. And I think that at some point in year 4, I will make that video as to how you can critically improve your play. But right now, there's no reason for me to make it since we have brand new subclasses and new weapons and items and all this new stuff coming in under a month. So there's really no reason for me to make that video.